Hello, sir. Good morning, sir. Hello. Hello. Good morning, sir.
Yes, madam, it's audible.
Okay, madam.
Hello.
Hello. Madam,
Sir,
my voice.
sir, you are in mute, sir. Venkatnath, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good morning to one and all. We welcome all of you to the Curtain Riser program of Unlockdown 3.0, a period of reorienting the teaching and learning. Hema madam. Hema madam, can you please unmute?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sir.
Madam, your voice is not audible, madam.
Yes, sir. I'll change, sir. Yes, sir.
Hema, madam.
Yes,
Hema, madam.
I'm just adjusting it, sir.
Hema, madam.
Sir, I'm adjusting it, sir.
Madam is adjusting.
Good morning, Hema, madam.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Hema, madam garu.
Yes, sir. Chappan, sir.
Madam, your voice is very low, madam.
Yes, sir. These technicalities are really.
Madam, I think some issue is there with your system, or otherwise you keep your that microphone near to your mouth, madam. We are unable to hear anything from you.
Sir, I'll try to join also through my mobile.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Then we can try this.
Yeah. Do it simultaneously. Join on it also, please.
తీసుకోండి తీసుకోండి టైం లేదంటే యాపిల్ ఇచ్చా తీసుకోండి ఇలా ఉందా
Sir, is my voice audible, sir?
Sir, is my voice audible?
Sir, is my voice audible?
Yes, madam. Now it is somewhat okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, madam, can you please share your screen, madam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just let us try once.
Sir,
Sir,
are you able to see my presentation?
Yeah. Can you please go to next one, next slides?
ల్యాప్టాప్ పని చేయదు
Is it clear, sir?
Yes, madam. Yes. It is clear, madam. It's very clear.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, madam. Thank you. చెప్పు వచ్చింది సేమ్ కంటిన్యూ చేసి ఓకే మేడం గారు
Sir.
యూ స్టాప్ షేర్ స్క్రీనింగ్.
Okay. Pause, sir. Or
Madam, please stop share screening, madam. Yeah, I did it. No issue.
yes. Sir, how is this voice audible in this laptop with the new set? Is it better or with the mobile is better?
Now you are speaking with mobile, madam.
No, sir, laptop only.
Now you with laptop. Okay. Now try once with mobile, madam.
Yes, sir.
Sir, how is my voice here?
Now eyes is excellent, madam.
Okay, so better to go about with the mobile.
Mobile is better.
Yes, madam. Now it is excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
Good morning to one and all. I welcome all the participants and dignitaries to the 1-week online National Faculty Development Program, the Cut and Riser program, which is scheduled today morning 10 a.m. So this program is scheduled from 17th to 23rd August 2020 and every day morning 10 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. As a part of this, today we have planned the Cut and Riser program, and the title of the talk is Healthy and Safe Learning Environment on Campus. Now, I would like to invite the dignitaries for this program. Registrar of Geetham University, Professor Balaji Garu, and Professor K. Srinivas Rao Garu, Principal, Geetham School of Science, Bengaluru campus, and Dr. P. Hema Prakash Kumari Madam Garu, the speaker of the day. Now, I would like to request Professor KVDG Balaji Garu to give his opening remarks. Sir, please.
Respected dignitaries and members, those who are joined in this particular program, I'm extremely happy to associate with this function, with this program, faculty development program, where the program is arranged in such an excellent way. It has educationalists, it has doctors covering various specializations starting from microbiology, then ophthal, psychology, social scientists, and administrators. Today's program is by Dr. Hema Prakash, who is very well versed with this infection control, and in fact she is the nodal officer at the Geetham Institute of Geetham Institute Medical College and Research, where she is doing a lot of work for the last 3 months, and she is actively involved and she is well versed with infection control and other things, and the participants can take a lot from her. And all the other speakers also, what I could see, they contribute a lot, and the participants will gain more out of this. I wish the program a grand success, and the participants will go with great satisfaction. And with these words, I thank the organizers for giving me this great opportunity. And on behalf of this Geetham University and on behalf of the Geetham Management Administration, I wish the program a grand success. Our administrators and management, Mr. Bharat, they all will be in the forefront for a change and to incorporate the things wherever required at the right time and in the right space. Thank you again, once again, for giving me this great opportunity. Thank you, Venkatnath, for this program. I wish the program should go in a very nice way, and the participant must be benefited out of this program. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Registrar sir, for sparing your valuable time. Now, I would like to request Dr. A. Ratnamala to introduce the speaker of the day.
A very good morning to one and all. Now I'm introducing Dr. Hema Prakash Kumari. Dr. Hema Prakash Kumari, currently working as a professor and head of microbiology, Geetham Institute of Medical Sciences, Rishikonda, Visakhapatnam. She has completed her MBBS and MD from Guntur Medical College, Gunturu, Andhra Pradesh, and MBA from Andhra University. She was a senior resident of JIPMER, Pondicherry. She has expertise in bacteriology, immunology, virology, parasitology, mycology, microbacteriology, diagnostic microbiology, and microbial analysis of environmental samples and infection control. She published about 16 journals of national and international repute. She has given many guest lectures and presented her research in various conferences and symposia. With this brief note, now I request Professor Hema Prakash Kumari to deliver the lecture on healthy and safe learning environment on campus. Madam, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Yes. Yeah, let me introduce myself, and I am Dr. Hema Prakash Kumari. Is my presentation audible? Is visible?
It is
Better
audible,
sound?
madam. Now the screen sharing is still continuing.
Yes, sir. I think my presentation is visible now, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Hema Prakash Kumari, Professor and HOD Microbiology in Geetham Institute of Medical Science and Research. As a part of working microbiologist in the hospitals, we also take care of infection control practices. We have been applying our infection control practices routinely in the hospital where there is an outburst of infections, and we take care of to implement measures to stop transmission among the patients and from the patients to the healthcare workers. And we also overlook to take preventive measures in the environment. I think now our measures have been spread across widely in the pandemic. In this pandemic, we have been testing our policies, how to go about our infection prevention measures in the COVID times. But again, we have seen a large change of world scenarios now with the current rise of pandemic. Every one of us know the timeline of outbreak of COVID. But before we start about reopening strategies, I thought let us see how fastly this virus has spread from somewhere else, a remote place in a Wuhan in China, and where is a South India, where is like Visakhapatnam or Guntur or any other place, or Africa or any other place where we are all suffering with this disease. So I think with this timeline, and we multiply the timeline of transmission of disease, we always can understand the extent of uh, rapid transmission. And that is why we can also see that we are in this scenario, what we can do to go back to the normalcy. Since past 5.5 months, we have not seen a normal life, right? So before going to that, I just want to go back to where we stand about this outbreak of the disease. Initially, this disease was just observed as a cluster of pneumonia cases by a small doctor in a place called Wuhan. When he started investigating, he started seeing a similar pattern in all the places coming from various areas of the Wuhan. And then he identified that there is a common pattern is there. So in between 3 weeks period of time, from December 8th to December 31st, he started alerting WHO, saying that there are cluster of cases are coming. All of them are similar etiology. It neither looks like influenza, it is looking like something, a different disease with an increasing transmissibility, which he has to alert, so that there is a chance of spreading of this disease within the China and to the other countries. Maybe nobody have imagined this, and from December 31st to January 3rd, there is a rapid transmission within the Wuhan. So from Wuhan, there were rapid deaths were being observed, and there is also a spread to other countries. I'll stop here because once the infection has spread to other countries, maybe in Thailand or Italy, and India is no exception, and there is an immediate spread was there. But how did this COVID-19 has created a challenging environment in educational system? I want to consider talk in it has affected in 4 different aspects. First thing is policy changes. Almost in 188 countries, there is a countrywide school closure was observed, and approximately 91% of students, they have lost academic continuity and quality. Literally students have lost their routine of going and listening to school or colleges or campuses in person. And regarding the structural changes, to combat or to face this remote learning or online learning, none of the educational institutes were ready. Even we can also see that there were 70% of countries with zero to limited distant learning capacities, which they have gathered all these capacities and then started teaching the students. And there were new technique skills, teaching skills or supporting skills to be learned to teach in a distant mode. Though there was a little bit of dissatisfaction was there in the teacher's mind, but teachers were have to get accustomed to these structural changes. Regarding social challenges, yes, there was no equitable access for the disadvantaged students. 75 million children already affected by crisis with the effect of COVID-19. And there was a disturbance of mental well-being among the parents and the students. Being myself also as a parent, where I find it difficult performing my duties as a doctor and monitoring my kids' education on an online, there is definitely a crisis is there. And also financial challenges. I could not get the proper figures of Indian figures, but it's been observed worldwide that governments are spending lots and lots of amount to mitigate the COVID-19, at the same time to identify the infection, to provide treatment practices, and schools are challenged with their income, with their which is the major income source of provision education apart from it. So let us basically understand where do we stand in this scenario. Let us understand that we are all there in a public health emergency. The virus spreads to many countries and many territories, even to our neighborhood. We don't know who are our neighbors who have been infected. So it becomes the prime responsibility of the teachers to safeguard the health and safety of the students, for administrator to safeguard the health of the faculty, staff, and when all these measures have been taken care of, the local community also have to be safeguarded. But any institute works with a close approximation with the local community. There were people coming out and working in the institutes from the community. So we should understand from where all we can get the infection scenarios. We also should understand the mode of transmissions. And what are various mode of transmissions of the disease? How does it spread in the educational campuses? And what are various fomites or called as high touch surfaces? So which are the items which are frequently touched by many people in the education scenarios when we think about going back to the old normalcy. Now I'm not talking about new normalcy. Now we have since past 3.5 months, we have accustomed to new normalcy, but we are striving in our hearts or we want to go back to our old normalcy. So all these points have to be taken care of. What are the various items where we come in touch, and these are in turn will transmit the disease and in turn will result in the high prevalence of disease. So to keep in all minds like all these things and to plan as an educationalist to create a safe and healthy environment, we should be well informed and prepare for various scenarios in the schools or colleges or campuses, university campuses. So before that, I just want to touch who are all the stakeholders involved in implementing these various effects. So as usual, the parent, teacher and student community for an educational institutes are the stakeholders to contribute or to contribute their efforts to risk mitigation strategies or infection reduction strategies or to create a safe and healthy environment. So education can encourage students to become advocates for disease prevention and control at home, at school, at community level. And by maintaining a safe school operations or reopening schools after a closure may require thinking about considerations of disease transmission and implementation of infection prevention strategies. And parents, by involving the parents, they become the auditors of extending safety precautions at home or warning the institutes at the time of infection outbreak to their students. So first and foremost, what are the basic principles of school administrators, teachers, and staff? First thing is, any administrator should allow 6 students, teachers, faculty, or staff not to attend or not to come to school in case if they have a symptoms. So educating their faculty, their students, their staff regarding the symptoms or the warning signs of the disease is a basic principle to be implemented. And the other thing is enforcement of regular hand washing. It becomes the responsibility of the administrators to encourage the hand washing and also to provide various hand washing stations or various requirements that are required to promote hand washing, which also have to taken care of, particularly in education institutes, are which is commonly known as WASH, W-A-S-H, WASH techniques, which is recommended by CDC. WASH is nothing but water, sanitation, and waste management. So when these three are taken care of, the infection prevention or the risk transmission can be mitigated. So there should be a provision of safe water. There should be adequate sanitation amongst the campuses, and whatever the waste that is generated. If students are coming in large numbers, if they are using disposable masks, or if they are throwing away the tissues after coughing, after sneezing onto this regular roads or in the classrooms, they become a source of fomites and a source of infection transmission. So all these points have to be taken care of. All these points have to be kept in mind that to implement WASH strategies in the schools and campuses. Apart from it, some physical infrastructure modeling or remodeling should be taking place inside the educational institutes. They should plan their classrooms, lecture galleries, or the practical laboratories, which involve the computers or the common touch areas, which to be located at a distancing. That is nothing but a social distancing to be incorporated in the classrooms or with the infrastructures, or when the visitors they come, how to create barriers or how to implement certain rules to make the visitors stand apart. And always it becomes imperative for the educational institutes to know the latest facts about the disease transmission, and that too from an authorized sources. So anything relying upon social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, to reduce it. But if we accustomed to a standard authorized sources, this will help us to improve our understanding of disease transmission, to know where do we stand in the outbreak of the infection in the society, and how to implement the risk mitigation strategies. And also I am using certain terms here: risk mitigation strategies, enhanced disinfection practices here. So risk mitigation strategies is always reducing the risk, where the administrators, the institute head should form a policy as a policy so that they can implement in diverse settings or diverse scenarios. For example, they can prepare a checklist and see everyday cleaning is taking place or not. They can create a checklist whether all classrooms have been spaced apart, or whenever there is a crowding is anticipated during the admission time, they are being spaced apart. Partitions have been created. There are plexiglass partitions between the seater, and when he comes in contact with the other persons, whenever they come to pay fees or in the dining halls, etc. Every institute should plan ahead and should have a reinforced supplies stocked ahead, either like a simple hand washing stations or a simple soap and water facilities or hand sanitizers available at the point of utilization. So wherever there are entry points or exit points in the near the toilets, near the dining halls, or wherever the areas have to be customized, have to be identified by the institutes, and then they have to procure the supplies and they have to keep it ready. All the areas which have been kept ready also be frequently audited and refilled so that no steps goes waste because of the lack of soap and water availability. Apart from it, regular cleaning was a routine process in any educational institutes which is routinely done by the respective class of employees. But it is high time for the institute administrators to educate them with what they should clean. That means there are certain recommended disinfectants to be used as a part of regular cleaning. So that is the reason we have used the regular cleaning with a word called enhanced disinfection. So regular cleaning coupled with an application of a disinfection solution becomes regular enhanced disinfection of the classrooms, of the common areas, of the entire premises. Once the student comes and the faculty comes into the premises, the anticipating the waste generation areas, anticipating the crowd generation areas, and application of these protocols are very, very important. Apart from it, the institute administrators should also think about the maximum crowding timings. So policies have to be made in the staggering entry during the time of entry or exit. So if more than 50 to 100 people are coming in between, previously it might be a very beautiful eyesight for us, all students rushing into the gate with the ringing of the bell or starting of the assembly, etc. But maybe we have to modify our mindset or thought to adjust to a new normal, taking a transmission from an old schedules to a new schedules. So we have to plan ahead how to limit the entry, how to make the people enter one by one at the beginning of the institute and at the same time end of the institute. If at all any crowded gatherings are there, like cancelling assemblies, sports and games, we have to think about cancelling them and should not hesitate to teach and create models of a new innovative models. So how best we can spread them out while teaching, and also how best we can reduce the touching, and this innovative strategies can really help. So ultimately, educational institute should establish protocols what we should do if a student or a staff should become sick, like getting communication with the local health authorities, separating the sick students without stigmatizing them, and a process of informing to parents and caregivers and healthcare workers. At the same time, information sharing should be encouraged by display of posters, videos in the campuses, and adapt a flexible policies and appropriate. We should always remember that outbreak of disease in the society is a dynamic process. Today, some 100 cases might be coming up, tomorrow 1,000. But until now, we should see that we should accustom the schools or educational campuses as per the outbreak of the cases. While we adjust to the outside environment, and while teaching takes place in an online environment or a blended learning, half online and half campus, and ultimately total in-person transition, there's always measures have to be taken to monitor the attendance and virtual disciplines. Monitoring attendance has got a very meticulous role here. Either monitoring an virtual attendance or an in-person attendance, any attendance has to be compared with an old absence absenteeism pattern. So that gives an idea why certain regular student is absent. Is there any health emergency has occurred in their family or anybody else? And keeping in view about all these scenarios, a continuity of learning has to be kept in mind, and institutes, when they keep in mind that mental health and psychosocial support needs have to be taken care of this. And I think all these points have been covered extensively in this faculty development program as we go about and travel in the next 2-3 days. Each and every point have been touched extensively by the respective specialists. For example, if we take about mental health, I can just only say that we have to maintain the mental health of the students, faculty, or anything. Maintaining a mental health in a pandemic is a very, very appropriate thing. We do not know whether the student has lost an ear one, whether the student has lost a parent or a sibling, or finding it tough to get adjusted back to the teaching. At the same time, our fellow faculty or fellow employees, the same scenario might be there. It is a sudden scenario where we have to adjust ourselves or our mindset that till yesterday, who are the people who are with us, suddenly within 2 days, we have to adjust to a new fact that they are no more with us, and we have lost them to a pandemic like COVID. So maintaining this kind of health also should be taken care of in the education, and this is how we can step back, join our hands, and get back to our old routine. So how about parents, caregivers, and the community members contribute to the risk mitigation and health and maintaining in health and environment, safe environment in the schools? Yes, the students and the faculty or the who are there with you, they might be there for a few hours of time, but the rest of the hours of time, they go back and they stay with their parents. It is very much imperative to educate the parents that though there is no lockdown, the new lockdown rules should be customized in the individual houses, individual homes. Whenever we are implementing these mini lockdown rules as risk mitigation plans in the institutes, it also becomes the responsibility of the parents, the caregivers in the hostels, to see that they monitor the movement of their kids, their wards outside of their places. These points have to be concerned or taken care of whenever there is an outbreak or a rampant infection outbreak in the society. At the same time, daily monitoring of the child's health and keeping them at home or keeping them at home when they are ill and out of the school when they are ill, and if they are healthy, sending to school should be taken care of by the parents or the caregivers. The teaching and giving a model good hygienic practices is a part and responsibility of the parents. They should teach because teachers, the parents are the best teachers of their kids, and they tend to incorporate with a sense of touch of care to their kids. Kids learn in a very well bettered manner, and a little bit thought in the grown kids or the students, and just keep in touch about them, a sympathetic warning that to get accustomed to the new cleaning etiquettes is also a very, very important point. At the same time, educating the kids with the waste disposal practices and telling them an irresponsible disposal of masks will result in an outbreak of infection is also a responsibility of the parents. Parents should educate their kids or their wards and should monitor them whenever they cough or they sneeze. They have an proper cough etiquette. That means either they cough or sneeze onto a tissue or onto their sleeves whenever sudden cough and sneeze has occurred. Maybe there is a lot of difference. A teacher teaching this cough etiquette to a parent teaching this cough etiquette to a student. So every measure will be a part of the risk mitigation plan of the educational institutes. The students should be encouraged to discuss out their feelings to prevent stigma by their parents, and the parents should coordinate with the educational institutes. Parents should never have any lenient attitude towards the symptoms appearing in the kids. If at all they have been sending the kids to the schools, for the next 8 months, they have to monitor their symptoms of their kids. They have to see if at all the kid has three symptoms together: temperature, like sneezing, and shortness of breath. They have to keep the kids at home instead of thinking that, okay, they are mild symptoms, let me send my kid. He will miss the school for one day. No, it is the imperative responsibility of the parents to implement such measures for the students. While imparting this education to the students, I think this again we are going back to the education institute, how to impart this age-specific health education. It is a big challenge for an educational institute if we talk about schools or colleges to monitor their health education of their students or wards. In a preschool, every teacher should find a way to incorporate the interest in the hand washing by a way of sounds, and to impart a new methodologies to track hand washing techniques. And if anybody are found to be adhering a proper protocol of hand washing, they should start giving rewards. And in a primary school, there should be a self-learning encouragement attitude should be encouraged, and expressing their concerns and monitoring stress and mental health should be monitored in the primary school area, where they are very sensitive towards this outer atmospheres. And in the secondary school, again, addressing the concerns, monitoring the hand washing practices, and making them responsible health advisories or health authorities inside the school campus or in their homes can be done. For the college students, their mental health can be addressed, safe practices can be advocated, safe waste disposal practices can be advocated, ask them to implement, and we have to make them responsible persons for monitoring of these waste disposal practices. For postgraduates and other university campuses, they can find out new innovative technologies to cope up with current scenarios, like economical ways to clean the entire campus with implementing of waste disinfection practices, reduction of PPE consumption every day, etc. So before going to now, after seeing who are the stakeholders in establishing a safe and healthy environment in the schools, so let us think, are we ready for the reopening? Can we reopen the educational institutes? What are the criteria that we should take into consideration when we want to reopen the educational institutes? I just want to say that this is not only a problem of South India, North India, or in India. It is a common thought process right now going on in the entire world faculties. So, what decides the reopening? Let us think about it. Are there any guidelines in the reopening? I just want to share about a few points or few insights into the new points which decides the reopening. Apart from the child homes, like educational institute has got a more influence on the child health. So before opening the educational institutes should take into consideration the level of COVID-19 transmission in the community as an important factor in determining to go back to person-in-person instruction. So the schools or educational institutes may be required to begin distance learning whenever there is a rampant infection, or when it is coming down or becoming stabilized, a blended learning, and when it is coming down, having a decreased trend in the society, then we can think about coming back to in-person training. But what decides it? CDC has got a criteria called gating criteria, which is available, which says that there are few points or parameters have to be taken in consideration for about a period of 14 days. And then depending upon it, you estimate how much percentage of rise of cases are there. I just want to take an example of Visakhapatnam as a criteria here. 4 days back, Visakhapatnam, if we think that there are 847 cases are there, next day 1000 cases are there, and the other day around approximately 1200 cases are there, then when we note down this outbreak of the diseases, then there is a certain percentage of rise of cases have been observed. So we need to plot them for about a period of 14 days and have to observe how much percentage of rise of cases are there in the outbreak of diseases. So that has to be taken into criteria. Along with it, a few other criteria are also being there, but I just want to simplify. So we have to take certain benchmarks to reopen education institute for in-person instructions. So the CDC defines the community spread as follows: minimal community spread, moderate community spread, and substantial community spread. In minimal community spread, there is an evidence of isolated cases or limited community transmission. Case investigations are going on. There is no evidence of exposure to large communal setting. Moderate thing, there is a rapid potential of increase in cases will be observed. And substantial community spread, like large scale uncontrolled cases, outbreak of cases will be seen. So you can see that in minimal spread, less than 10 cases per 100,000 population. Moderate, 10 to 100 cases per 100,000 population. Substantial cases, greater than 100 cases per 100,000 population. So the percentage of positivity is less than 5%, 5 to 10%, and greater than 10%. So if these criteria can be taken into a criteria and can be set as a benchmark, then we can know whether to come back or whether not to come back. So what to see? In a minimal transmission, yes, you can plan to come back. You can think about asking half of the people to come back and daring to start the in-person instructions. And these are the additional consideration for offering in-person instructions, like specific health benchmarks, a 2-week decline, and the present positivity, there is less than 7% positivity, and COVID-like illnesses are less than 10%. So by creating such initial reopening checklist or benchmarks, then the coming back strategies can be taken place or thought about. So I just want to touch about how to wearing a mask. Everybody we know that do's and don'ts of wearing mask, because consistent wearing of a mask, in a proper way, and the proper removal of a mask or storage of a mask places a very pivotal role in maintaining a healthy environment or also risk transmission. And how doctors and nurses wash their hands, now it's become a common etiquette to entire household. I think in this aspect, even now, even the kids, small kids at home, now they tell us what are the 8 steps of hand washing techniques and how do they wash, etc. So now this is not only a knowledge of a doctors and nurses. At the same time, the symptoms of COVID virus or COVID-19 should be more and more educated to the staff, etc. So any emergency warning signs, remember, suffering for a fever for continuous 2 days might have gone, might have been a normal attitude before, but not now. So if you have a dry cough, if you have a little bit of difficulty in breathing and a fever for more than continuously for 3 days, a severe pains, body aches, and associated with diarrhea, new loss of taste or smell, then consider that these are the warning signs of the COVID-19. So implementing physical distancing in the infrastructure, in the educational institutes is a very, very meticulous thing. So if anybody always think that, do I have to measure the 6 feet in the education campus, just keep in your mind that your routine sleeping bed measures 6 feet. Just think that there are about 7.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7.5 basketballs. They measure about 6 feet. So you can ask your janitors, your people who are rearranging the classrooms, that this is the approximate 6 feet distancing that you have to incorporate it. So I just want to take an example of a new school day, if at all it is opened with a reduction in the cases. So before leaving the home, just monitor the sickness. If any symptoms are there, stay back at home. Fill your own water bottles, pack your own lunch. So then the kids will board the bus. Once the kid boards the bus seating should be staggered, should be separated. So there is nothing like a loading loads of students in the buses like before. These points have to be meticulously planned. And next, at the school, as soon as the school students enter back to the school, check for the symptoms. And when the students go back to the classrooms, they go back to the classrooms where space ducts are spaced apart with a 6 feet difference wherever feasible. The lockers and hallways should be reduced for the scheduled access. And overcrowding should be avoided. Washing hands should be encouraged whenever the crowds they come and join together. Drinking fountains, that is in the foreign scenario, should be hands-free. But for us, hand washing and cleaning of the common taps should be encouraged. Lunch, spaced seating, staggered outside. Bathrooms, enhanced cleaning of the bathrooms, availability of the hand washing and soap and water, this thing. And while picking up, if the buses are completed, alternate pickup departures and the student go back to the house. And always during the entire process of entry into the school and leaving the school, the mask should always be on. So for the safely returning to in-person instructions, I have summarized this in the slide, what should be taken care of. I have a few points picked up from the various consultancies when they have advised for the reopening of the higher educational institutes. We should always remember that any universities or higher education institutes are like mini cities, and we have a global citizens in these mini cities. The global citizens might be from the different places, different states, etc. So there is a close interaction between students. That is, sometimes if they are asymptomatic and they come back, so these situations should be thought about, anticipated, and they should be spaced out. And various risk profiles new joining of faculty, coming from outside daily through a public transport. All these high risk profiles should be anticipated. And as an local community inside the campus, should be able to train the student, should be able to educate the student, should be provide essential services, healthcare, food, etc., and bring back the unique configurations of the risks. So these are the various 10 points for the reopening of education institutes as suggested some consultancies. These 10 points concentrate on local conditions of the health system capacity, that is monitoring your educational outbursts, and testing, tracing, and other protections in the campuses of the students, protecting the vulnerable population. So if there are allergic populations are there, highly diabetic individuals are there, more than 65 age group individuals are there, you should have your separate policies for protection of vulnerable populations. Universities should employ their own safeguards, like how do I have told you, the spacing out of the classrooms, spacing out of the athletic rooms, gyms, etc., residential occupancies, dining and student activities, offices while coming the large crowding while paying the fees, etc. So various scenarios of reopening. So we have seen what are the scenarios of reopening and maximize the missions in the next normal, detailing the operational planning to all the employees and the stakeholders. At the same time, governance and compliance, monitoring these policies have been taking place or not, communication, and anticipating the financial impact in the risk mitigation plans should also be done. So testing, contact tracing, and confirmed cases quarantine policy, what are the other campuses-wide health and safety policies? I just want to touch on these areas. All other areas might be familiar to the all the teachers aggregated or congregated in this FTP. But I just want to tell what are the tests available right now, how do the contact tracing work, and what we should do with the confirmed cases, what do you understand by a quarantine and an isolation, and what are the other campuses wide health safety policies you should be taken care of. Right now in India, for the identification of COVID-19, we have different types of tests. Some genetic based tests which are called as confirmatory tests. So whenever you see outside, people will say that my PCR test has come positive. What should I do? Yes, any SARS-CoV RT-PCR test which detects E gene and S gene are confirmed positive cases. Some of the times the COVID cases can be confirmed by doing a TrueNAT test by saying that this patient is a confirmed case. Remember that nowadays the chest HRCT, whatever it is being done, yes, it does help it when the person is having a shortness of breath, but it should be always coupled with a confirmatory test. Then only a person can be said to be confirmed COVID positive. There are certain tests called antigen tests. There are certain tests called antibody tests. What do they help? What do they do to us? Antigen kits like SD Bioline kits, they are easy to administer. Sometimes you can keep them in your own settings. You can test or screen this, but that requires permission by a healthcare authority. Sometimes when you are calling back the large number of population into the campuses or the universities, you have to screen. You don't know whether they have already had an asymptomatic infection and had developed antibody. At this time, the antibody-based test comes in hand. By doing an antibody trace test, some of the faculty might be aware of, they might have underwent antibody tests also. So they are positive for the antibodies. Remember, being positive for the antibodies is not a disease. It is a sign of exposure and a measurement of an immunity. So all antibody-based tests are indirectly are indicators of immunity. So these can be employed while testing the students. So with this, many of the faculty might be thinking, why can't we implement antigen tests to the students while they come back? Or why can't we implement antibody tests to all the people when they come back? Yes, you can think, but always think that whether you need to get associated with the public health authorities. You have to think that if you need to send the swab testing in your university campuses, what are the requirements do you require? Who are the exact personnel to take them? How safely you have to transport? Because everything is associated with any breach will result into the epidemic breaching. Because it's a pandemic, any breach will result into the spread of infection into the respective personnel. And testing capacity, and what are the operational barriers in implementing this? So when diagnostic testing is implemented for contact tracing, you can try this like once some persons are positive, you have to identify who was the person who had come with a close proximity of the positive person. Remember that any positive person is capable of transmitting the infection 2 days prior to the appearance of the symptoms. So if somebody, they have observed their symptoms and went back for the testing and turned out to be positive, for example, say yesterday, remember that 2 days before yesterday, the people who are all in close proximity, that means who have come in less than 1 meter distance or who have spoken to them for more than 15 minutes, they are at risk. They should be identified by the educational institutes, and they should be also tracked back and tracked or traced, and they should be asked to stay back at their own places, observe their symptoms, and after 5 days get their testing done and come back to the places. So there are broader testing surveillance strategies are present, but these are there for the large community screening rather than this. So what are the challenges? Certain individuals have an increased risk of complications from the virus. Remember that. You might be seeing that some few younger people are succumbing to the disease, few older people are succumbing to the disease. But always think that we have to keep in mind who are the vulnerable population in the educational institutes, like 65 years and older, who have an underlying conditions like asthma, hypertension, and diabetes, immunocompromised people like having a cancers or who are undergoing any beta-methasone injections, hospital workers, and students without health insurance or anybody without health insurance coming from a high-risk areas. So always plans has to be made, policies has to be made to keep them in mind, to monitor their health signs and keep them whenever they are at a distance. And the other important criteria or area which I have been reiterating again and again is mental health and substance use. Substance use can be anything. The proper mental health is a critical point in maintaining or the running back of the going back to the original old normal in any education institutes. If any of the student faculty, they have lost their dear ones, there is every chance that they get accustomed to the substance use like alcohol or any other drugs. And then we also have to take care of and anticipate these among the students and the employees. So these are the internal safeguards which we can apply and which we have already discussed before, like classroom and faculty, research, student and laboratories, residential occupancies in the universities, dining, student activities like club activity, off-campus and on-campus activity. Sometimes certain programs are twinned with abroad, but right now all those twinning abroad study programs had a curfews right now. And offices, we have to take care about their entrances, exits, stairwells, etc. And athletics, fans, athletic scheduling, staff recruiting, and tracking of confirmed cases. And if at all, if any faculty are coming with a child, we have to take care of their child care, etc. So in all these, we have to think about in the atmosphere, what are the most restricted areas, moderate restricted areas, etc. These are the various examples how we can implement the safeguards in the educational institutes, like standing apart, employees serving customers standing 6 feet apart with each other with a visual distancing cues. That means all these distancing cues should be pasted upon the floors. Where should they stand? In fact, every educational institute should communicate with their staff, employees, and students through these symbols in the educational institutes. Sometimes if the students do not have brought their carriages, there should be a provision of a pre-packed food items should be picked up, and always with a sign that take whatever you touch. Don't leave the food pack whichever you touch. And checking out with the contactless payment should be encouraged. And people or students or the faculty sitting apart and eating their dinners and lunches, not sharing their lunches should be encouraged. There are no days nowadays to sit together, enjoy our lunch parties with our fellow colleagues. This is not the time. So we have to encourage this idea and tell them the significance of this. So the gating criteria, which I have always touched before, I just want to tell you that when we can exactly think about the interactions, about going back to the reopening this thing. Initially, whenever high infection is there, the low workplace density can be planned. and a high student and public interaction on through online can be planned. Low workplace density and low students in a very high exposure of the infection. High workplace density can be planned when there is a normalcy is observed and low student interaction can be seen. And when every situation comes back to normal, high workplace density and high student and public interaction can be planned. And this is the reopening archetype. And this reopening archetype is based upon the CDC gauging criteria. In fact, every educational institute should have their own dashboards that indicating that which zones are in red, which zones are in yellow or a green, so that we are constantly aware and transmit this infection based on it. And research potentials are always there to explore. We have to encourage the research platforms for developing the data sets for the students and faculty to conduct research virtually, and also to overlap or give incentives for the new innovative technologies and apply their innovation in the risk mitigation strategies of COVID-19. And as I've always said, once all these plans have been implemented, there should be a governance and adherence policies to monitor that whether these policies have been continuously taking place and continuously being monitored, whether the data that is procured, that is being properly tracked, whether the resume supplies that are being continuously monitored to be made available for the employees, students, and the staff. So I think with this, I could give a little bit of insights. So how important is the health and safety of creating a safety environment in the educational institutes. And I thank you all for your patient listening. And I also thank for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas with all of you. Thank you very much.
Now I request Ratnamala Madam, okay, to read out the questions, whatever raised by the panel members.
First question from CH Uma Devi. How to differentiate ordinary coronavirus fever and normal viral fever?
Yes. Ordinary corona, like a normal viral fever is also associated with fever and body pains. But coronavirus is associated with an upper respiratory tract illness. Either you have an irritation in the throat or irritation in the nose. Either you will have a weird taste and smell or some uneasiness in your upper respiratory tract. Why? Because the virus replicates in your upper respiratory tract, either the nose or the oral cavity. So when you have a coupled these symptoms with the fever and the body aches, then definitely it is a COVID. When only fever and body aches is there, then it is another viral fever. Yes.
Next question, madam. What are the precautions required for primary school children in home and school? Question by Rajgopal.
Yes. Nice question, sir. That is what I have touched in my presentation, that strategies have to be implemented in educating preschool children. Preschool children are very much closer to their teachers when compared to the parents at times when it comes to the learning atmospheres. So in case of preschool children, they have to be educated in a new ways. Previously, whenever we have rhymes, we go back to YouTubes. We show them animations. But right now, I feel that it is the time to generate a new method of transmitting this infection to preschool children. Maybe it is a very higher task to the teachers to develop new songs and hand washing, new songs and identifying symptoms, but it is the need of the hour. Yes.
One more question, it is similar to that by G. Rajeshwari, madam. Even though schools took precautions, how students will come to school without buses or some other vehicles which may not maintain social distance? how could we manage transportation is one
Yes.
question.
This is not only for the schools, but for the education institutes too, which provide buses for the commuting of the large students out there. We don't have any other option except to allow few percentage of students, and that too depending upon the external criteria. Depending upon the reduction of the cases only, then only we can shift back to the increasing number of students or a little bit of reduction of the distance with the masks, etc. But right now in the scenario what we have, except maintaining the staggering distancing in the buses, asking them not to come by the public transport, asking them to come by their own transport, we don't have any other options. I'm sorry to say that, but this is what is the scenario we are facing.
One more question, madam. This is, I think, most common question. How to take precautions when someone from neighborhood got corona positive?
What I can say that a neighbor coming positive or your own family becoming member becoming positive is one and the same. Let me tell you. Only thing is you maintain you maintain a safe hand washing precautions, cleaning precautions at your house is the same. How do you do these practices when your own family member becomes positive? If your neighbor has come positive, you have to identify and think for a few minutes that what are the common points you and your neighbor have visited, you and your neighbor have touched, you and your neighbor, like for example, if you had a chat, if you had a coffee, if you had a tea, if you have a dinner, think about those scenarios. If you did not have any of these scenarios, you are safe. If you had any of these scenarios with your neighbor, so I just take some few examples. Playing housey, okay, sharing a tea in a less than 1 meter distance in this current scenario. So you should plan yourself which are the high risk activities you had with your neighbor, or similarly you had with your housemate, or you have your own family members. So that it tells you whether you are at risk or you are not at risk.
Madam, one more question from Professor Trinatha Rao. When can we expect the decreasing trend in COVID-19?
Yes. Sir, please, if anybody want to touch this, please plot the rates of transmission in your respective places. So if I'm addressing around approximately 75 to 80 people of educationals here, just try this. Plot your outbreak of cases in your respective government dashboards. Plot for about 14 days and see whether there is an increasing trend or a decreasing trend. This will be helping you in two ways: to predict your own infection rate in the neighborhood, and this is also useful to your educational institute, both. Yes.
And one more question, madam. Some of the members are consuming Ginkgovit and vitamin tablets. Is it advisable or not?
Sir, maintaining an immunity and health is always advisable. I still say that maybe that's my personal view. It might not match the many of the faculty view. Indian food, Indian contemporary food, the way we have to consume has got a lot of health potentials, which we have forgot and foregone in the recent years, if I am not wrong. With our busy schedules, what we have did is, we have been accustomed ourselves to a more of a complex modern scenario where we cook for 2 to 3 days, we pack them in our refrigerators, we reheat it in our ovens, or we consume our hungry, or we suppress our hungry with the pizzas, with the so-called junk foods. Thank God that the lockdown has made us to go back to our normalcy, maybe to our old normalcy, old traditional things. Whatever you eat healthy food, you eat on time, you eat it in a hot way manner, And our traditional food, if you observe, if you have seen it, it always says that you just read the scriptures. I am not a particular religion. It's not that, sir. Every religion says that you eat a proper composite food. Every religion's composition of food is rich in proteins and advises that you eat it hot. So please practice your own food, your own competencies. So a rice with a fry curry, with a dal, with a curd, and always you might have remembering it back. A pinch of lemon pickle, a pinch of mango pickle in your curd is very good. A rasam, which is filled with tamarind, which gives you enough vitamin C. Taking these supplements is okay, not a problem at all, because in previous 5 months before, whatever the deficiencies you had in these taking these supplements, you might have covered by this time. So maybe by this time, many of the faculty might have felt a lot more healthier than before when you have been working regularly, if I'm not wrong.
And actually, one more similar type, madam. Some of the people are consuming hydroxyquinone and other medicines as a precaution and preventive method. Is it advisable or not?
I say no, because hydroxyquinone, when advised and prescribed by the medical faculty, you take then only. If at all somebody are prescribed hydroxyquinone, either they are close contacts of a positive person or have been very close contacts of a sick person. Otherwise, hydroxyquinone is being advisable and advocated for healthcare personnel only when they routinely go to the hospitals where they have a frequent chance of exposures. But consuming hydroxyquinone without your proper pre-investigations is riskier. Hydroxyquinone is not supposed to be consumed without knowing your ECG pattern, your heart risks, and your hypertensions. So without knowing that, if you just take it or consume it based on any WhatsApp message, just like what I have reiterated, it is risky.
And one more question, madam. Is there any counseling facility available from the government side, as some of the affected patients are committing suicide, becoming panic and other things?
I am not aware of it, but I definitely know that AP government had got a telemedicine facility. But as a part of a humanitarian process, many of the psychologists and psychiatrists have started a helplines which you can browse on the net. These helplines are for free sessions and they are available for 24/7. But I'm not right now not aware of those sessions. But it is an initiative taken to support the mental health of the other fellow beings.
From of the college faculty only, if at all, if college reopens, what kind of precautions has to be taken in the hostels, especially to prevent COVID-19?
Hostels, you have to see from where the students are returning back. You have to see, this is a small technique to keep and track of the infection rate scenarios. So you have to segregate those students. But whenever a student or a faculty comes back, you should ask them their negative report and also their antibody test report. If antibody test is positive, the student is immune. There is no nothing that the student will not get reinfected. But at that moment, the student is immune. If the antibody test is negative and also antigen test is negative, these students are at risk. So they are entering and these students are at chance of acquiring the infection. So these students, you should have a plan of implementation of checking their temperature, pulse rate, and a pulse oximeter. Nowadays, I incorporate all these three in an like monitoring checklist in every household and every hostel. Digital thermometer per individual, digital blood pressure monitor per individual, and a pulse oximeter finger probe. All these three has to be monitored and a monitor check has to be recorded, and this will help you, the hostel wardens, that they have been monitoring their students and these are the checklists available for the day-to-day monitoring. And any case of symptoms arise, you should have a plans and facilities to isolate them. let me tell you, yes, quarantine them. Let me tell you that quarantine is something that you keep people separated in case of onset of symptoms and observe them whether they are worsening or not. If it is a normal cough and cold, it reduces by 3rd to 4th day. If it is not reducing, the fever is not reducing for 3 to 4 days associated with other symptoms, then these are warning symptoms which you have to start testing and take the other necessary implementations. If the person is positive, in test positive, then you have to isolate them, totally separate them, give them food to themselves, depending of their symptoms. After intimating to their parents, give them a choice of getting admitted into a hospital, etc. Okay, so these have to be planned. Either you are quarantining them or you are isolating them.
And actually, one more question, madam. What medicines we have to keep at home at this time? What supplement tablets? Question by Sridhar Maisa.
Yeah. Supplement tablets, whatever that improves your general health, that is fine. Taking a paracetamol in case of fever, you are suppressing it. You are suppressing the throat pain. Maybe that is the reason that government has imposed a ban on keeping antibiotics and them. But right now, it becomes imperative that without taking any painkillers, just observe your symptoms for 2 days. See where do you stand and what other symptoms do you have. Then go for testing. Right now, there are no facilities for the common clinics. So you don't have any other option other than testing. So if you, even the testing also, I just want to reiterate that the testing will become positive only after 48 hours with 90% or 67 to 90% efficacy. So observing your symptoms for 2 days is not a problem. Any serious symptoms or a deleterious symptoms or a drastic effects are observed only after 8th day. So it is always safer without taking any painkillers, observe your symptoms.
One more last question, madam. Is it advisable to drink Ayush herbal decoction daily, or is there any side effects for this? By Ramya Sri.
Yes. Ministry of Ayush and the decoction what you have been said is being advocated by our central government. So that means central government has not left any choice of taking advantage of every type of medicine, allopathic, Ayush, even yoga also. So it is not definite that only this will work or this will not work. Now we have to go in hand. So if you are able to tolerate that, so per day or at the times of symptoms, yes, you do continue it. But definitely approach for a testing in case of outbreak of symptoms. But definitely not be in an idea that this Ayush drink will kill the virus. This Ayush drink is going to cure out of the disease. This Ayush drink is, they clearly say, these are all immunity boosters. They are not virus killers. So as long as you don't have symptoms, you continue them. But once you have symptoms, observe for 2 days, definitely go for approaching of testing. Okay. So club the ideology for both.
Yes, next. Over to Professor Venkatnath sir. Venkatnath sir, please unmute yourself.
Yes, madam. Yeah. Thank you, madam. Here, two more members raised their hand. That
Yes.
is Abdul Javed. Sir, Abdul Javed, sir, you can raise your question, sir. Mr. Abdul Javed.
Sir, good morning, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Ma'am, if we have, I think this question is related to what Ratnamala ma'am asked. Okay, if we have like just neighboring 1 or 2 houses, okay, if anyone is positive, what are the precautions? Because we have to move around and maybe we may come in contact with them, even though they stay indoors. What are the precautions we have to take, ma'am, so that it doesn't affect us?
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to apply this to not only to the neighborhood 2 and 3 houses also, but I also apply this to your apartment people. Remember that though this virus is very rapid in transmission, 80% people are asymptomatic, 80% people are recovering. Approximately 8 to 10% people are succumbing to it. God has given one resort that this virus can be killed with what? With regular soap and water and alcohol, 70% alcohol, or hypochlorite solution that is nothing but a common bleach. You might have seen that as soon as whenever there is an outbreak of infection, what does the municipality people will come and do? They'll come and spray the bleaching powder. Yes, this is for this thing, but is it for only for one day? No. When you are in a neighborhood hole or neighborhood, when you are in a collective neighborhood, you can plan spraying of 1% hypochlorite solution. I just want to take a small of this. I don't know whether this idea will work out in a community or not. Maybe we have forgot nowadays to spraying or sprinkling in front of our houses, and we used to keep rangoli, right?
Yes.
So we have forgot. We have got changed into duplex apartment scenarios, everything. When you are in apartment scenario, cleaning in front of your houses with 1% bleach, do you know how much it comes around? 1 tablespoon of bleaching powder in a half bucket of water. Okay, or like a bleach liquid will be there. Okay, Clorox wipes are there. All you can do for a cleaning or spraying of your in front of your houses, that prevents you from the spread of infection. If all the households come together and do it every day, twice a daily, remember that the virus is mitigated in the environment. Okay, but not
you.
gatherings, no public
Thank you.
gatherings. Yes.
Yeah, here one more person, Neduru Sujata. Madam, can you please unmute and raise your question, madam? Neduru Sujata. Neduru Sujata, raise your hand. Okay, right. Okay, all right.
Actually, one more question is there. Is there time? Is there, sir?
Just a last question. Yeah.
Can I ask? Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead for the last question, madam.
If any person from Geetham family has COVID emergency situation, is there any procedure to directly admit it to GIMSR hospital?
Let me tell you everything that COVID positive patients, GIMSR is now catering to the entire like Visakhapatnam campus. It is designated as a district isolation hospital. That means irrespective of the cadre, any positive person, if they are coming up with a confirmed positive report, Aadhaar card and a referral letter from a local medical officer, they can be admitted straight away. Whatever the treatment that is provided with all these 3 reports, they are put under CMC Arogyasri Padakam, and entire treatment is given for free, including the oxygen facilities, including the ventilator facilities. But with the rampant virus infection, the disease is so rampant that the entire ICU is being filled up totally. No ICU beds are a lot of scarcity now. And similarly, the oxygen line beds. So that is the scenario right now. Yes, not only GIMSR faculty, any persons, whoever has a confirmed positive report, you are directly admitted in GIMSR hospital. There are no hassles. Only thing is you have to share this with the government, like a hospital nodal officer, that's me, and an assistant nodal officer. We have a routing system by allowing in the security, and then from the triage room, and then directly admitting into the hospital. We have a meticulous monitor, and I am proud to say that the entire GIMSR hospital fraternity since past five months, they have been struggling hard. We have catered to around 1,500 inpatients. We have successful outcome in 780 patients successfully treated and left. Unfortunately, yes, we do have deaths also, but we could not have stopped it. And we have very few cases referred to the other higher institutes. This is the scenario.
One more like common question.
Yes.
Is there any possibility to attack coronavirus twice for the same victim?
Yes, we did see that in 2 different cases. These 2 different cases out of 1500 is an extremely rare, but it is also a possibility.
Harish, please.
Many are there because of the time we are not able to.
Okay, thank you, madam. Thank you very much for sparing your
Thank you, sir.
valuable time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we are thankful to both Dr. P. Hema Prakash Kumari Madam Garu for delivering an excellent information, and Dr. KVGD Balaji Garu, the registrar of Geetham University, for presiding over for this Cut and Riser program, and also to Professor K. Srinivas Garu, the principal of GSS Bengaluru campus. Thank you, madam. Thank you, Balaji sir. Thank you, Srinivas sir. Thank you very much. Now I request the participants to stay for 1 or 2 minutes so that I can explain you about this attendance as well as the feedback system. Okay, now I think already all of you received attendance and feedback links. I will show you just within 1 minute so that you can go through it. Yeah, so feedback form opens like this, and then you can give your register number. For each participant, we have given one register number. You can check your email. In that, we have given the register number to each and every participant, and the name of the participant, mobile number of the participant, and then email address of the participant. And after that, okay, they can give the feedback on the person. For example, today, Dr. Hema Prakash Kumari Madam has given on healthy and safe learning environment. You can give the feedback, either strongly agree or strongly disagree or in between, number 1 to 5 scale. And then 3 more options are given to you. Those are, you can elaborate the points on which you agree with the speaker, elaborate the points on which you disagree with the speaker, and elaborate the points that you want to further add. So like this, for each and every speaker, 3 more options will be available. So if you are going to submit this information, based on that, we are going to select the best participants. So here you have to give the analytical mode of answer. Based on the analytical mode of the answer, you will be given the best participant for the few members out of the registered candidates. So 4 to 5 members will be selected. And attendance is also like this, simple one, a register number, name of the participant, mobile number, and the email of the participant. So these are the things you have to fill up, and all the links for attendance as well as the feedback, all of them were shared with you already. But the only one issue is they will become active on that particular day only. On that particular day only, they will become active. So this is information about attendance and the feedback forms and the best participant awards, whatever are there. And then if you have any query, you can email us at any time. And the regular program will start on 17th. There will be an inaugural session for a period of 5 to 6 minutes, followed by the regular sessions, whatever are there. So this is about the program schedule. And one more issue is about 22nd. On 22nd, as Vinayak Chaturthi is there, some of the participants requested to reschedule. That's why on only 22nd, the program will be in the afternoon session from 3 to 5:30. As far as the Sunday is concerned, it will be as usual morning. And the last announcement is regarding the tools, whatever required for the online teaching. We are going to send one more link to all the participants in case if they want to have hands-on experience regarding the Google Form, Google Sheets, Moodles, etc. We will conduct in the form of the workshop, or if they feel that it is enough if we give in the form of a seminar like lecture, that's up to you. So you can choose that one. If you are going to choose the workshop mode, we are going to give a separate certificate for that. Okay, this is about the information. If you have any query, you can email to us. So with this, I am so thankful to the registrar sir, KVGD Balaji Garu, the participants, and Dr. Ratnamala and all other members. Thank you very much.
Thank you.